This is on Kevin Love's new 4-year, $120 million deal. I don't know why this is the video we keep showing of Kevin signing $120 million, but there you go. This is his extension, and the piece is great. It talks about whether it affects his trade value. You could kind of go either way, because the new contract pays him far less than what he could have gotten on a max deal next summer. If he had re-signed with the Cavs next summer as a free agent, it would have been for $221 million over 5 years. But there's a question of, would someone be handing Kevin Love a max contract as a free agent, given all the other stuff going on out there? That this was sort of a strike while the iron is hot, and Dan Gilbert wants to make a post-LeBron statement, so it's a good time to come to him if you're Kevin or Kevin's agent, Jeff Schwartz, and say, hey, how about giving us $100+ million? How do you think that would affect his trade value, Kev, down the road?
More later than earlier. It's one of those contracts where I think the last year is actually the cheapest. And as we get down, as the cap goes up, his salary goes down. He represents a smaller proportion. And, you know, teams. He's a guy. If it's Minnesota Kev, and he is essentially a good stretch big who can rebound like hell. You could see in 2 years a team saying, yeah, we'll pick up the last 2 years of that deal. It's not a long-term risk. The salary goes down, or you could look. You might even see if he comes out Minnesota Kev, maybe there's a Blake Griffin situation.
Well, remember, this is an extension, so in essence, it's a 5-year window that he's under contract to the Cavs. So I just don't see that. Maybe at the end, towards the end, because as you mentioned, it goes down in salary. But that to me is more of an accounting error as opposed to having him play basketball in a meaningful way. So if the case is, can he really help your team at that salary with that contract? I don't think very many teams will be interested in trading for Kevin Love.
All right, but here's the other thing, that he could be traded into space. We're going to have a ton of teams with a ton of room next summer.
Right.
They all think they're candidates for the big free agents.
That's what I was about to say.
And you know what?
You don't have to go that far down the road. You go to next summer, right?
Exactly.
But what is Kevin Love on a championship team? We've seen he can be a third piece, sort of, right, at times. So I just don't know if you're a team that wants to win a championship if you're going to go $30 million in on Kevin Love.
It's just so hard to say, right? Because there's a bunch of unknowns. We don't know if he's going to return to be Minnesota Kevin now that he has the space to do so. That's obviously the idea. I mean, Chris Bosh, when you say, oh, he was the third option, Chris Bosh was technically the third option on those championship teams who molded his game to fit around everybody else.
But they still had Dwayne.
He did, but when they re-signed Chris to that huge contract that he unfortunately didn't end up really playing on, it was a huge number that they signed Chris to, kind of investing as him as a main option, correct?
The difference between the two, though, is that Chris Bosh, in his years in Miami, who was a guy who was not a good defender prior to in Toronto, became arguably, for a couple of years, the best pick-and-roll defender in the league. That's not Kevin Love. He doesn't have that aspect and facet to his game. So I think that to me, is the difference.
The other big thing that we don't know is the health, right? I mean, Chris Bosh is obviously the ultimate example in that direction, but Kevin hasn't played. I don't think he's ever played 82 games, and I think it's been a while since he's played even 80, that kind of thing. So if we get a really full, healthy Kevin Love this next season, if the numbers are great, I'm with you. I actually can see people calling the Cavs once they strike out on the vaunted, top 4 free agents and being like, okay, give us a Kevin Love. I don't know if the Cavs are going to want to deal him then. They say they want to keep him long term. I can see that question being asked, but if he's not healthy, then that obviously changes the equation.